Most of Mervyn Rowley's films have survived because they were not printed on the notoriously combustible stock. And today, housed in tins in the wine cellar of Rowley Hall, they continue to mature as if they were the fine wines they usurped. Their creator took it on himself to replace every liquid heirloom with a film, the contents of each bottle providing the inspiration necessary to fill the substitute tin. Each measure of intoxication was another muse, and apart from some epics and the musicals, many of the films were made in about the same length of time it took their author to fetch and drain a bottle. Few people have seen a fraction of these films. The ones he showed, the ones the local people demanded to see again and again, were the loops. Today in St Ives there are those who still recall being taken by their fathers to watch films passing through various contraptions and who did not even glance at the projected image. Howls of terror and laughter were as likely to erupt from these onlookers as from those who had come to see what was thrown on the screen. Mervyn never charged anyone to see a film, but people would have paid to watch them repeatedly. And in a surviving letter there is a request for the rerun of one particular loop, a popular 2-minute cultural wreath of two painters fighting over a flower arrangement. The loop films, which form the greater part of his cinematic oeuvre, have been dismissed by critics who believe an earlier passion for pottery had simply gone to his head. But it was the joins Mervyn was interested in, the seamless connections with which beginnings and endings may be eradicated, drawing him closer to those intangible spatial and temporal entities, infinity and eternity. These loops of Mervyn's were extensions of his own pottery, circular rhymes and revolved canvases, and were made in St Ives before the war. This was a time when children were more easily enthralled by simple circles, like "'Twas a dark and stormy night when the captain said to the mate, 'Tell us a story, mate.' And the mate began, ''Twas a dark and stormy night.' When the captain said to the mate, 'Tell us a story, mate.' And the mate began. Some of Mervyn's loops ran for over an hour. The next loop shows Mervyn using an unjoined language, in which a movement in one direction denotes day, while a move the other conveys the opposite, night. The speed of a movement adds nuance. Changes in level of meaning into subgroups, for example from night to dark or black, are indicated with the knees, case and gender with the elbows. This proved to be a language of great subtlety, being one in which concepts are physically and poetically hinged. Finally, a circular drama, one that displays a small but cumulative flaw. A burglar steals a mirror. Plunged into darkness, the mirror is removed from the room and sold.
Two bob for this. £2 for the lot.
Two nicker? Oh, you're the robber.
Then bought, gift wrapped,
Perfect likeness guaranteed.
and returned to the same room from which it was stolen. Here the mirror is given as a present.
Oh, I do.
For 7 o'clock. Grief, we'd better dash.
And when the couple leave for the theatre,
Come on.
it is left behind in the room. Once again, the burglar enters and steals the mirror, and so the story might continue forever, with its protagonists trapped within a perfectly circular drama. Were it not for a single anachronism, one which must ultimately destroy this circular world. For the paper in which the mirror is wrapped is not taken away by the burglar each time he steals and re-steals the mirror. And thus the wrapping paper accumulates until it must fill the room. In St Ives today there is a spot known as Mervyn's Cut, where Mervyn regularly perpetrated the equivalent of a cinematic splice, turning suddenly from a female into a male. Here he is rehearsing. The purpose of this charade was to drum up custom for my failing psychoanalysis practice by unsettling the passers-by. This was some months after I had advertised my services in the town as an analyst, because the later versions required the breasts to be in position at the start. It was always necessary for Mervyn to play the female role first. Though it was Mervyn's intention to startle innocent bystanders in order to propel them into analysis, he did not know that local passers-by were a sect, a type bred over the centuries to withstand all efforts by individuals to draw attention to themselves. Although members of the shockproof clique were rigorously trained, in the end they were no match for Mervyn, Walter and myself. But that is another story. Mervyn's quick change acts failed to bring me a single customer, and all his loops were destined to lead nowhere, like a sand dance. But looking back, perhaps the loops did lead somewhere, as though each circular film was a wheel or a cog, which, when worked together, operated something, as if Mervyn was making with his loops a device to carry him in some other direction. Until someone has time to go through all Mervyn's films in the wine cellar of Rowley Hall, we cannot tell whether these early loops really took Mervyn anywhere. But we can hazard a guess that they did. For in some later films he incorporates not only the occasional loop, but also some very short loops with reversals in them. For example, in this extract, a lady lost in the countryside is watching as a farmer gives her directions. But she has obviously disengaged her brain and is just observing him as though he was some kind of strange jellyfish. She remains mesmerised by his gesticulations until she can snap out of it. Where exactly Mervyn was headed with his loops we cannot tell, and like the lady lost in the countryside, we just linger, disengage, observe, and then continue on our way, really none the wiser.